sector of.
I forgot to turn the record button on. I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, it's no worries. No worries. I've gone the whole entire thing, and then we only record the end when everybody's leaving, so it's no worries. But I can't promise to get your whole life together, but what I can deliver on is giving you a bit more clarity on the taxes and accounting side of your business, and making sure that you understand what being a business owner means from a tax perspective, and some things that you can do so that every year when you file, and anytime if you do have any run-ins with the IRS or any state authorities, that you have nothing to worry about because you've got all your boxes checked and ducks in a row. So in the past, I've done some webinars that are specific to notaries and loan signing agents, and then wrote an ebook a while back, and I'll see if I can find a link to that, and I'll post it in the chat in case folks are curious. But I've talked about taxes for notaries, which there's some specific things that you want to keep in mind there. We've talked about, I kind of gave a crash course on QuickBooks and bookkeeping, just in case you're first starting out and this is something that you may not have the ability to pay somebody else to do, but you know it's important. So we've done that. We've done LLCs before. We've done S corps before. We've done investment accounts before. So we've done a lot of different things. So if any of those topics interest you, you can either reach out to me. I'll put my information later in the webinar, or you can poke around on the EC Head Consultant YouTube channel too, and you'll be able to find it pretty easily. But for tonight's conversation, what I wanted to focus on, I've got some slides here that I'll share, is some myths and facts about LLCs. And it's part of what I do. Part of what Priority Finance does is help people form business entities like LLCs. And if you've been in the entrepreneurship space, particularly online, for even a millisecond, you probably have seen these three letters. You've heard of this term. You may have even done some of your research on your own. But you may not have talked or had an opportunity to talk to an actual person that does this for a living, or you may not have actually had an opportunity to talk to somebody, like an accountant or an attorney who can properly advise you on what an LLC actually is and what it means. And this is by far the topic in the tax and accounting world that gets the most misinformation out there on the internet, but also some of the most popular things that people like to talk about. So I'm hoping that it'll be relevant for you, whether you already have an entity or whether you're thinking about it. My hope is that by the end of this conversation, you will have a bit more clarity on what will that actually mean for your business, what it won't mean for your business, and then you can decide, whether you're ready to take a step in that direction or not. So let's go ahead and get into it. And feel free to pause me at any time, or go ahead and drop your questions into the chat throughout. None of this is a sermon, and none of this is really all that scripted. It's just some stuff that I've always had on standby, and wanting to share with folks who are curious. But here's our agenda for tonight. I'm gonna start with a little bit of a crash course on LLCs, just so that we're all operating with the same language and understanding, and that we're all on the same page. But the second part is the part that I haven't done yet. Is I'm gonna walk through maybe about a dozen or so common myths about LLCs that people think is how they work, and then I will tell you basically no, and that this is actually how things are supposed to function if you want to get out of your LLC what you should, and what you can use it for. And then at the end, I'll give you some tips. I'll also give it to you kind of in the beginning of the crash course, but I'll also give you some tips too on how to form an LLC. Like Tamika said, I've formed, I think, a couple of entities for her, and a lot of folks in this network. And so feel free to reach out to me if you're looking for a professional to handle this on your behalf. But let's dig in. Let's start on this crash course. And for folks who are joining us again, or maybe folks who are watching this on YouTube, some of this is going to be similar to what you saw in the past LLC webinar. And that's why we're going to kind of keep it concise and not go too deep into it. But for folks who are brand new, we'll give them something to work with. An LLC is a business structure, and it's based out of each state. So it's not something that's on the federal level. You don't file for an LLC with the IRS or with the United States government or anything like that. It's something that's you file for it in each of the states, whatever one you choose. And the main thing is that it's really just a piece of paper in an office, right? It's a piece of paper in a state office that has some of your information, it has some of your business information, and it comes with all these weird powers that a lot of people don't understand. But at the end of the day, that in very plain terms, that's kind of what it is. It's a file that you have that represents your business in a state office, whatever state you choose to have it in. And then it comes with certain privileges and benefits as it relates to limiting your liability, hence why it's called an LLC. Some of the notes that I have here on the bottom is that it's not the same as a corporation. And so, we see acronyms at the end of different entities like, maybe you see incorporated at the end of an organization, or if you see LLC at the end, or if you see a lot of different things. This is not necessarily a corporation. You can be an LLC and a corporation, but if you were to wake up tomorrow and have an LLC in the state of Texas, you're not automatically a corporation. And those come with different tax implications, but so it's not necessarily a corporation. Don't get it confused with that. And depending on what industry you're in, you may have requirements in your state to form a particular type of LLC. And notary and loan signing agents are not among those types. It's primarily a lot of my peers who have to have certain types of LLCs just based on the industries that we're in and the liabilities that we have to have in order to do what we need to do. But if you're somebody who you may do notary and loan signing work, but you may do something else, it's worth doing a quick check just to make sure that you don't have specific requirements in terms of the type of entity that you can have based on what you do in the industry that you work in. But that's in a nutshell, which is something that you could easily Google and that you might have already known is what an LLC is. Where there is some confusion is what do you do with it from a tax perspective? And so we could go on for way more than this hour webinar talking about taxes as it relates to LLCs, but I want to give you something that you can quickly screenshot so that you know how you need to file your taxes, regardless of how you choose to do so. Whether you are doing it by yourself on a H&R Block TurboTax type platform, whether you reach out to somebody like me, or whether however you choose to take care of it. The important thing that you first establish is how do I need to do it? What forms do I even need to have now that I am an owner of an LLC? So I'm going to walk through these three things real quick, just to make sure we're all clear. If you have an LLC and you are the only owner of it, you may have also heard the term called a sole proprietorship. You don't need to worry about any additional forms when you file your taxes. All you're going to do is when you take your W-2 from your job that you may have had in the past, or a 1099 that you may receive, you're just going to add something that's called a Schedule C to your 1040 tax return that you already submit every single year. And that's going to have all your business stuff on it. And so everything is still going to flow. All of the totals of your gross income and all of those things are going to pull directly from your business. But you are going to be responsible for all of the taxes related to it. It's just going to be as if you had an additional 1099 for a certain amount on your Schedule C. Obviously, tax preparation is a lot more complicated than that. And a lot of people who have more complex situations but try to go at it by themselves often end up making a lot of mistakes. And so I encourage you to reach out to wise counsel if you think that your taxes have gotten complicated past your, not really your ability. Anybody can understand it's really your interest to spend a whole bunch of time looking up tax law. But if you are the only owner of your LLC, you have probably the most streamlined path to filing your taxes every year. If you are in business with somebody else and you have more than one person, you, unless that person is your spouse, and we can talk about that if that's relevant and people are interested, but for the most part, if you're working with somebody else, and let's say you own the LLC 50-50, there's an additional tax return that you need to file, and you won't owe any additional money. You won't need to pay anything, but more than likely what you're going to have to do is pay somebody like me to fill out this additional, more complex tax return. And that's the 1065. If you've got multiple owners of an LLC, you've got to fill out the 1065. And after you do that by March 15th, which is a month earlier than the regular tax deadline, after you do that, that's when you will get something from that called a Schedule K1, and that's what you will add onto your personal tax return. So all of the partners will get a Schedule K1 for their portion of the business. And then the last one is for corporations. I won't spend too much time talking about it, just because not a lot of businesses who are just getting started usually file for as corporations, just because it's not super beneficial for a lot of people. But you have to fill out an additional tax return. You'll have to pay additional taxes, and more than likely, if you're at the stage where you want to become a corporation, you should already, before you make that decision, you should have a CFO or somebody who a tax professional or an accountant advising you through the process. And you should already have a plan for them to handle all of those affairs. It's not really something that, if you're at the stage where you want to do that as a business owner, you should be at the stage where you can hire somebody else to take that headache away from you. But for corporations, they file an 1120 if you're a C corporation, or 1120S if you're an S corporation. Both things that I'm more than happy to talk about. Usually not relevant for most people. Most businesses are either sole proprietorships or partnerships. And so the main thing to keep in mind is, if you're in business with somebody else and you didn't realize that you have this additional tax return that you need to file, you should start figuring out a plan on how you want to do that. And the main thing to consider is that the TurboTax of the world will have the software that you need to do that. But I highly discourage you from trying to figure out the 1065 if you've never done it before. And if you're at the stage where your business is doing what it's supposed to do, ideally, that's an expense that you can just deduct and is part of your business plan to have somebody take care of that for you. But in a nutshell, this is what filing taxes with an LLC looks like. For most of us, if you only have one owner of your business, all you're going to do is just add an additional paper on your 1040. That tax return you always get is just going to get a little bit longer, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Oops. All right, I'll pause here for a second before we get into the myths and the facts, since that was probably the fastest and quickest breeze over of a crash course on LLCs that I could get without redoing the webinar we already did. But anybody have any questions about, well, we're gonna get into way more stuff, but questions about what an LLC is, how it works, and then we'll start getting into some of the things that you can find online that might trip you up a little bit. All right, we'll keep pushing. So next section is we're going to do some myths versus facts about LLCs. Some of these are specifically relevant to notaries and loan signing agents, and then some of the things that I know that y'all have to have and deal with. And some of these things are just general about business owners overall that you can easily find on the internet. So I'm gonna start going through some of these one by one. First thing, all notaries have to have E&O insurance, right? A certain amount. Can't remember what the liability coverage is. I know y'all probably know better than I do, but you've got to have it. When you sign up, you go through the NNA, and they kind of offer you a deal that can kind of go with all your other certifications. And so it's a good thing to have. A lot of other businesses, including businesses in my profession, have it because sometimes we make mistakes. But a common misconception is, my business insurance. If I'm already required to have it and I'm already paying for it every single year, why do I need an LLC? The purpose of an LLC is to protect me and my liability against something that happens. That sounds a lot like liability insurance. That sounds a lot like E&O insurance. What is the point of me having both? And so the short answer is that E&O doesn't cover everything. Even all the other insurances that you might get. The reason why there's so many of them is because not one of them covers everything. And the primary thing that E&O won't cover is if something really, really bad happens, right? E&O is if you make a mistake and that mistake has consequences that are greater than what you can repair on your own, right? So maybe you can, if it's something that you should have known when you were notarizing the paperwork, you can negotiate a deal with them to refund half their money or to make it up to them in some sort of way. Right. We're talking about errors and omissions that have really, really grave consequences. There's so many other things that could go wrong with your business that an E&O insurance agent is going to be like, well, that's really unfortunate for you, but that has nothing to do with an error or omission in your work. Other thing to keep in mind is that insurance and an LLC, none of it will protect you if you deliberately make a mistake or break the law. There is no thing that you can buy that somehow shields you from being held accountable if you do some criminal act. There's obviously a certain level of margin of error that's appropriate because we're all human. But then there's stuff that's outside of that. And if you are doing intentionally shady practices or intentionally doing things that could wind somebody else up getting hurt by your actions or you being in trouble because of the decisions that you made, neither an E&O or an LLC is going to cover you. But an LLC will cover you for other liability things that have nothing to do with your work. And this could be helpful if you have concerns about if you've got a brick and mortar and people are coming into your establishment. More than likely, you need to have an LLC as well as some other liability insurance, because one bad slip and fall could be, the end of your business. It could look a bit differently if you're a mobile notary and maybe you appreciate the protection with your car, or maybe you appreciate the protection going into other people's homes. But either way, I encourage you, I don't encourage you to look at your E&O policy, because insurance paperwork is among the most boring paperwork that you could ever read. But I encourage you to at least receive the message that E&O is not a blanket that is just going to cover you in all the situations. And an LLC is kind of where all those other areas as a business owner, where you can be protected. Okay. All right, my LLC protects my business from ever being sued, right? So the whole entire idea of an LLC is that if somebody sues the business, somebody sues your business, the only things that could ever, if you end up losing the case and you've got to pay your dues to that other person, the only things that could ever come up in discussion for assets that they could seize are the ones that are owned by the business itself. So if you've got an LLC and you've got a storefront and you've got a location, the only things that they can take are the storefronts, maybe the cash that you have, the equipment, the assets that the business actually owns. But we're not talking about your house where your family sleeps. We're not talking about your personal accounts. We're not talking about your retirement accounts. None of that is going to be in jeopardy, right? That's a big reason why an LLC exists. That is a benefit of it. Is that personal protection. But that has nothing to do with your business being sued. Your business could be sued for anything. Your business can be sued just because somebody wants to mess with you and has the time to give you a hard time. The LLC doesn't prevent any legal proceedings from happening. It ideally, if you've set it up correctly, been using it correctly, and you have a solid attorney working on your behalf, ideally it'll be as at maximum a speeding ticket and something that's kind of just a nuisance, but not something that completely derails your business. But by no means is this going to keep you out of court if you're doing things that are going to get you into court. LLC will not save you from any of that. Businesses get sued all the time. Businesses with LLCs get sued all the time. But the difference is, as an owner, when I have to walk into a courtroom, I have a bit more peace of mind that my business is the only thing that we're talking about in jeopardy. This doesn't compromise me and my family and my personal finances. My business is a venture that I know as an owner comes with risk and comes with costs that I have to assume. But I can sleep well at night knowing that I'm at least going to have my stuff as a person. So, but that doesn't mean you won't go to court if something happens, right? The LLC can't save you from that. Similarly, as long as I have an LLC, I'm fully protected. The main point of this myth is that if you do something wrong, you're going to have to be held accountable for it. And really, there's really no workaround for that. There's no way that we would create something like an LLC that would be this all catch-all thing for criminals who also want to be in business to do a bunch of dirty work and then be like, no, I have an LLC, so I'm straight, right? Not how that works. You're not going to be fully protected from anything ever. Going into business for yourself is something that is a risk, right? There's no venture that you could go into that will not come with risk, and there's no amount of LLCs that can fully protect you, especially if you intentionally do something wrong. So I've kind of probably already made the point over and over again that an LLC can't save you, but that's just to reiterate the point. The fourth bullet point, I can use my personal name or my LLC, maybe on paperwork or documents, or maybe when people write checks out to me. It doesn't really matter, right? And this is a very gray area, right? Because more than likely, if you go to the bank and you have a couple checks from different folks that you've been working with, and some of them say your business name and some of them say your name, the bank may let you get away with depositing a check that has your name on it into the business account because you're the owner of the business and your name is on the account. But for the most part, that kind of defeats the purpose of having the business account and having the liability protection that it affords. If you are mixing personal finances and business finances, then this kind of covering that an LLC can provide and can protect and kind of shield your personal assets ends up disappearing because nobody can tell the difference between your personal finances and your business finances. So just as a general rule, as much as possible, if you are working with folks, and especially if they're giving you money, have them put your business, have them put the name of the business, the LLC, on there as much as possible. Your personal name, you probably won't notice the impacts of it because you'll probably be able to get away with it for a little while and nothing really will happen, particularly if nothing bad happens. But if you want to maximize the LLC for what it's supposed to be, and if you don't want your personal name and address and bank account number and all these other things floating amongst your business relationships, then just ask them to write it out in the name of your business. And normally it's something that most folks is not too much of a nuisance for most people, and is very common practice. So I just encourage you as much as possible to put everything in the name of your LLC if it's related to your business. Okay. Another aspect of LLCs is about debt. One of the benefits of it is that if I, as a business owner, if my business takes on a bunch of debt trying to expand and grow, which a lot of businesses do, a lot of businesses, try to get business credit in order for them to expand their operations. Something goes bad and my business can't pay its debts. Maybe we run into a pandemic, or maybe we run into really hard times. I will not be personally responsible for paying those debts, right? Hypothetically, that's how an LLC is supposed to work, right? It is that even if if the business files for bankruptcy, that doesn't mean you file for bankruptcy, and that some of your personal finances will still be protected. But none of that matters if you personally guarantee the loan in the name of your business, right? If you personally guarantee it, which is really, really common in the early stages of businesses, when your business may not have the credit to stand on its own, right? You're just getting started. I don't know where you would have gotten all this great business credit from before starting a business, right? When you first start out, if you are going to get a business credit card or you are going to take out a small business loan, more than likely, they're going to ask you and your personal finances to personally guarantee it, right? And even if the loan is in the name of your LLC, because you are guaranteeing that loan and backing it in the case the business can't, that you just eliminated the protection from debt that could happen, that an LLC could afford you. And for some businesses, you can't avoid it. Some businesses, if you really want it to grow, that's a risk that you're going to have to take. But if you are under the impression that, oh, well, my business took out the loan, so if the business can't pay it, I just kind of will default on it and my business will be shot, but I won't have to worry about it. That's not the case at all. It's really no different than if you personally guarantee a loan of one of your family members, or if you have an authorized user on your credit card. What that literally means is that if they don't handle their business, the bank is going to call you. And if you have that same arrangement with your business and in whatever debts that it assumes, your LLC is not going to protect you and prevent you from having to shell out your own money in order to take care of the debt. So as much as possible, work to build your business credit if that's something that you want to do so that your business can stand on its own. Don't take any debt that the business can't handle on its own. Obviously, unless you're okay with the potential exposure. And it's something that your LLC won't prevent if things go bad, but it might be worth it, especially in the earlier stages. So it can't protect you from every type of debt, especially if you personally guarantee it. All right, this myth: my LLC is separate from me, so the business files and pays its own taxes. You'll hear this from if you watch previous webinars, you hear me say this all the time. Your personal finances need to be separate from your business finances. You need a separate business bank account. You need to have all of your business operations in a separate place from where you handle your grocery bill and your rent and your gas bill and all those other stuff, right? But when it actually comes down to preparing your tax return and putting things together, most of the time, for most LLCs, unless you're a corporation, for most of the time, you're going to file and pay taxes on your 1040, where you normally would put your W-2 and your 1099s, whatever else you have. You're going to pay for those taxes as the owner, right? The LLC itself won't pay for those taxes. And when I say those taxes, I'm particularly talking about federal income taxes. So we're talking about the IRS. Different states might have different franchise taxes or sales taxes. Those are things that your business is going to have to pay because those have to deal with operations and are more specific. But when we're talking about income taxes, you're going to take all of the profit that you made and it's going to flow onto your personal tax return as the owner. Even though you're going to keep your business and your personal finances separate, the IRS is going to see your W-2 income right next to your self-employment income. It's all going to go into the same thing. And so even though they're separate, most LLCs do not need to pay their own taxes. The business itself won't have to pay taxes. You as the owner will have to pay the taxes on whatever profit the business generates. So it's a bit of a wrinkle in terms of how we manage the LLC. We keep it separate. But in terms of how we pay the taxes, it's all together. Even if you have multiple businesses, all of them are going to flow onto your same 1040, and you're going to pay the taxes as you as the person are going to pay the taxes for however your business is performed for that previous year. Okay. Forming an LLC will automatically help me save money on taxes, right? Not the case at all. If you just happen to want to have an LLC and you start having one and you start using it, whether you have one or not, the amount of taxes, federal income taxes, I'll say, federal income taxes and self-employment taxes that you're going to pay is going to be the exact same, right? That's not where the savings in taxes comes from. If you were to just wake up one day and start a business and you're a sole proprietorship and you don't have an EIN or an LLC entity or anything like that, and you put it on your tax return, it's going to come to the exact same numbers as if you add, XYZ LLC at the top. Right, the LLC itself isn't what automatically saves you on taxes, right? It is the decision, it is the side of the tax bracket that business owners can operate in. That generally is where the tax savings come from. We have a lot of opportunities and loopholes and different tax havens that we can take advantage of that folks who work purely 9-to-5s can't do. But the LLC itself doesn't give you any tax benefit. It's not as if you just write off and say, hey, IRS, I know that I look just like this other person that has a notary business, but I have an LLC, so you can dock my stuff down just a little bit, right? Not how it works, right? You're a self-employed person no differently than somebody else who doesn't have an LLC. The LLC itself, the entity itself, doesn't automatically come with these tax benefits, but being a business owner does. And if you haven't taken considerable time to figure out what benefits you can take advantage of, I really encourage you to do so. Or reach out to somebody like myself, because this is the kind of conversations I have with folks every day. And that if you're at a stage of your business where you aren't keeping track of your books, you aren't keeping track of your expenses, you aren't tracking your income, I can guarantee you're overpaying thousands of dollars on taxes if you are putting it on your tax return, right? Assuming that you're being honest, at least in your revenue, because most people always know the revenue. You can always tell me how much money I had coming in. But if you're not keeping track of the money that goes out, or a lot of these other benefits, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, you're probably missing out on thousands of dollars. But nonetheless, the LLC entity itself doesn't come with a tax coupon attached to it. You've got to do some work in order to achieve those, and that work doesn't automatically come just with having an LLC. Okay. This is one that you will definitely read conflicting things, because half of the internet gets paid if you click on their links and choose to go through forming an LLC in specific states. And then the other half is kind of like me, where we know the truth, but we don't show up high enough in the Google search for most people to read about this, right? You probably have heard that there are certain tax-friendly states, and if you're from Texas, like I am, we're in one of them. And at least from a state income tax perspective, we don't have those like other states do. But for LLCs, if you just do a search in Google search, some states that you're going to pop up is, you've got to form an LLC in Delaware. Delaware is the place to be. You've got to do it. It's really easy to conduct business there. They make it super easy. They've got this fancy court system that makes it really efficient to handle business cases. You're going to get your LLC in no time, and you're not going to have to worry about much. Nevada is another one of those states. Wyoming is another one of those states.
Delaware.
And so, yep, Delaware is certainly number one on that list, right? And I'm not going to waste time debunking the benefits of those states because there are tax havens in this country and there are ways that you can be strategic. But I just want to say that for a vast majority of people, especially a vast majority of people getting started, the benefits of you figuring out how to form an LLC in a different state but still operate in a different state is not going to be worth it, right? The folks who are making decisions like that are the folks who can afford to pay folks like me thousands of dollars to take care of all of that. And so if you are just starting out in your business and forming an LLC is a significant business cost, you shouldn't even be thinking about how are you going to juggle having an LLC in Delaware and then registering it as a foreign LLC in the state of Texas, and then making sure both of these states get the documents that they need every single year. You should be busy running your business. That's stuff that people get paid a whole lot of money to do. And you shouldn't worry about that until you're at that stage where you can let somebody handle it. Obviously, if you've got the interest, by all means, please go ahead and do so. But for a vast majority of people, when you include all of the legal and accounting costs that it takes to have a bunch of LLC entities in a bunch of different states, a lot of people would have actually saved money just forming it in the state that you're in, right? This is not going to be something, particularly if you're a small business or if you're working by yourself. These benefits that these states brag about and talk about, a lot of them are for the large corporations and the Fortune 500 companies. It's not really something that you need to spend a whole lot of time worrying about, or honestly, I think pay a bunch of money to somebody who is trying to convince you of all of the benefits that are in other states. If you found somebody and they're at a good price, then that's perfectly fine, right? Then there's no issues there. But there's never been a situation where somebody, especially here in Texas, if you're in Texas, it costs $300 just for the state fee to form it. So if you wanted to figure out how to do it by yourself, you could do it if you had $300. Other states are cheaper, other states are more expensive. But we pay little to no taxes on anything here. Obviously, we've got real estate, we've got other taxes, we've got sales tax when you go buy stuff. But your business isn't going to owe anything to the state. You don't owe anything to the state, and you're not going to owe any franchise tax for your LLC until you make north of $1 million in revenue, which is obviously we all hope to get there. But most of us don't wake up millionaires the next day just because we started a business. And so while I encourage you to do your due diligence and see if you would like to explore one of these tax-friendly states, go ahead, read what you'd like and then talk to the folks that you'd like to. But just know for a vast majority of people, the vast majority of people that you're on the websites that you're talking to that want you to get into this tax-friendly states, you'll probably save money, especially if you're small and at the beginning, just forming it in the state that you're in and not having to worry about all that paperwork or having to pay somebody else a whole lot of money to handle all that for you. So that's more of my 2 cents in my opinion on that. And I can get into more detail if folks have questions. Let me check the chat real quick, just to make sure. Ms. Walker, what are the 3 states that I mentioned? The 3 that are most common, Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming. And there are a few others. If you Google, you'll be able to find easily. This is the stuff that, this is the clickbait that people are like, oh yeah, just come check out these tax-friendly states. So there are several others, but vast majority of business owners are perfectly fine and save money just forming it in whatever state that you're in. Wherever you're going to be, that's where it's going to be, because there's so many other costs and tasks that come with forming an LLC in a different state than where you operate in. And once you start talking to an accountant or attorney about how they're going to help you do that, that's when their retainer starts increasing. And if you're first starting out, it's probably not something that you need to spend your money on. And it has nothing to do with your operations, right? You're not going to necessarily save thousands of dollars in taxes in your first year just because of the state that you chose to put your LLC in. But there are other reasons. Some states are better at maintaining the anonymity of the owner. So you can hide your identity a bit better in some states than others. And if that's really, really important to you, then that might be worth checking out. But no different than anything, if you are hard set on that's something that you want to do, and you think another state besides the one that you operate in and you live in will do that better, be prepared to pay for it. The folks who do this for a living know that this is stuff that the people who really care about it to the extent that they're going to pay quite a bit of money to have somebody set all this stuff up for them. And so if you're not willing to shell out, north of $1,000 at least, if not more, to have somebody do this in a bit more complex way, then I think you're better off just figuring out how do I form an LLC in my state, and all of the LLCs that I form. I always recommend my clients, and then maybe it's just the folks that I work with. A lot of folks who are part of this network, I always recommend them, let's just do the state that you live in and that you operate in. We don't need to make this complex. You don't need to pay me money to do all this extra stuff that's not really going to benefit you. So take that for what you wish, but that's kind of my 2 cents on that. My LLC protects others from stealing my business name or IP. So every time I start forming an LLC for somebody, they get the impression, the name matters, right? The name's got to have a ring to it. It's got to be jazzy. It's got to be something that's going to catch people's eye, no differently than your logo and your branding. But the name of your LLC, the only protection that you get from that is that somebody else only in your state can't form an LLC with that exact name. That's the only protection you have. If I form ABC LLC in Texas, somebody can't literally come and form ABC LLC, right? So you've got that name locked in Texas for the LLC. But if somebody already saw your Instagram handle and they've already got millions of followers, do you really think that having an LLC in the state of Texas is going to change what they're doing in your business? You have no grounds to come tell them, hey, I'm sorry, I know you may not know this, but I have an LLC under this name in the state of Texas. And so I'm going to need you to give me your username so that I can, just kind of start gaining some of the followers. And then when people look up on the internet, I don't want them to get confused, right? No, that's on you. You've got to choose a name that's got some territory that's open, right? You've got to choose a name that's not something that somebody's already done. And forming an LLC is not the same as intellectual property. It's not the same as a trademark. It's not the same as a copyright. It has nothing to do with any of that. And so if that's something that you're worried about, if you know you've got something catchy and the name is something that matters, and you know you've got something so hot that somebody's going to try to steal it, you need to sit down with an attorney that specializes in IP law. Right? That's when you want to start having that conversation. But getting an LLC in the name really doesn't do much, right? All it does is say that somebody in your same state can't form an LLC in that state with that name. It doesn't prevent somebody else in another state from forming an entity in that name. It doesn't prevent somebody else from blowing up with that name in a different context. It doesn't prevent somebody from outside of the country from forming an LLC with that name. It's not this cloak of protection that sometimes it may seem. So if that matters, if you know that you have a name and a name is part of it, a lot of folks in fashion, that's really important to them. A lot of folks in the tech space, that's important. No differently than if you care about the tax-friendly state or if you care about protecting your identity, like some of these tax-friendly states do, be prepared to pay an attorney quite a bit of money to take care of that for you. But that's separate from forming the LLC entity itself. The LLC entity doesn't do that. You're going to want to talk to somebody who specializes in that. And then the last one, having an LLC will automatically help me qualify for business loans, grants, and programs. A lot of businesses have been applying for things, probably more in the last couple of years since the pandemic started than maybe ever before, because there's been more programs than ever before. And a lot of folks who maybe have just started or maybe have 1099 work, and have a legit business and have some decent profits going, but don't have an LLC yet, may feel a bit, sometimes when they look at paperwork, can feel a bit insecure, not thinking that they're legitimate enough to compete for these opportunities. Or you may hear of other people who get these deals from cities or from governments or whatever the case may be. And you think because you don't have an LLC that you can't compete for those. And I want to be here to tell you that having an LLC has absolutely nothing to do with that. I'll say this, and I hope that folks are listening closely to my words when I say this. I guarantee you that the vast majority of people who got COVID-19 assistance for businesses in this past year or so had LLCs, right? But that had nothing to do with the fact that they had an LLC. Has nothing to do with that. It is because most of the time, people who make the decision and take the step to form an LLC run successful businesses. Usually they run their businesses differently. Usually they keep their business finances separate. Usually when a bank or a government or anybody who's trying to give you money is asking for your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your financial statements, They don't have to go scavenging around and trying to piece this stuff together because they're organized and they already have it. That's that's really what makes the difference in terms of people getting applications and not. It has nothing to do with whether you have an LLC or not. It usually has to do with whether you meet the eligibility requirements, obviously for the program. But in terms of how your application looks, it's really just a matter of being organized. Do you care enough to do your books every single month? Do you care enough to make sure that your tax return that you filed reflects an image of you and your business that will look attractive to people who are trying to give you money, right? If you don't put your business on your taxes and then you say, hey, I want to get this business loan to get my business started. Well, if you've been doing this business supposedly for however many years, so you should be really easy for you to pull out your Schedule C from last year, right? That's the difference between businesses who are successful with these and businesses who aren't. The LLC itself has nothing to do with it. If you've got your stuff together and you don't have an entity just because you don't feel like you need one or you don't necessarily want one, that's perfectly fine. But most businesses who invest the time and the money to stay organized and do this, most of them find that paying for an LLC is also something that it's just an easy box to check. But I don't want you to think that just because you don't have one, that somehow the LLC gets you to a backstage pass or a private VIP party in the back of the room that nobody else can get into. There's no special privileges. You're competing for the exact same money as anybody else. More often, getting an LLC represents something about the business owner and how they handle their business, but less about the actual business itself. But if you're organized, which I hope that if you made the decision to form an LLC, that you're wanting to take your business to the next level, that's what's going to put you in position to compete. But saying, oh, well, I've got an LLC, so what's up? Like, why are you asking me all these questions? Why are you asking for all this paperwork? They're still going to want to see your financial statements. They're still going to want to see your tax returns. They're still going to want to do their due diligence to make sure that you are the business that you say you are. So LLC can't save you or protect you or get you into the door or anything like that. But normally people who make the decision to do that usually got their stuff together. And so if your business is something that you really take seriously and it's something that you want to protect and you want to last, it's something that you want to pass on to your kids, and it's something that you hope continues to grow, you'll probably find yourself in a camp of people who have LLCs. But that doesn't mean that the LLC did it. You've got to do it. You've got to be able to do that for your business. All right. I think I went through, let's see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10, I think. Yeah, so we can call this top 10 myths about LLCs that you're going to definitely find online if you're searching around and you're Googling. And I hope that was helpful for you. The last part here, there's only one slide, is if you have been thinking about it, or if during this presentation you're like, man, I think forming an LLC is something I can do. Here are just the 4 steps you got to take. The name is important. You got to pick a name, and you got to make sure that name isn't taken in your state by a different entity already. You got to find something that's called a registered agent. Essentially what that means is that you've got to have somebody on file or a business on file that will kind of be the buffer between you as the business and the courts, should anything ever happen. And you will find businesses online that charge $100, $200 a year in order to be your registered agent. It's something that is mandatory, I think, for all 50 states. I don't know a single state that doesn't have it. So something you got to have. You'll find businesses who you can pay, a couple $100 a year for them to serve as your registered agent. You can also serve as your own. But for everybody whose LLCs that I form, I serve for it for free. And so that's not something that you'd have to pay for moving forward. And it's something that you've got to have. It's something that's important. You definitely want to be intentional in terms of who you choose and make sure you can trust that person. But should you pay hundreds of dollars every single year for somebody really just to sit around, in the event that you somehow get sued and somehow they get the mail before you do? Probably not. You're probably going to know, especially if you're involved in the ins and outs of your business. So second is finding a registered agent. You can serve it as yourself, or you can find somebody else. Third is to draft up the paperwork. And the 2 things that are most important for LLCs are operating agreement and articles of organization. Articles of organization is what gets sent to the state. Operating agreement is what you keep in the business. that says how you run your business. And if you ever get in this situation, particularly if you're in business with other people, and let's say some of your business partners burn you, or things go really, really bad and you want to dissolve the business and sell it, the operating agreement is going to be one of the first documents that anybody asks to see. Because, if there are issues and two business partners are fighting, we need to go back to the paperwork that says how they're supposed to behave. And if it says that you're supposed to split everything 50-50, even though you really did more of the work than that person did, the document says 50-50, then that's more of a management decision. And you've got to sit down with your partner and say, hey, I'm pulling your weight, but I don't feel like we're in good terms. And so if you particularly if you're in business with somebody else, and you obviously trust this person enough to get in business with them, but you're also smart enough to know that people make mistakes and people might not be who you thought they were. I highly encourage you to spend the time and the money that it takes to hire an attorney that specializes this in writing up an operating agreement for you. When I form LLCs, I provide one for all the clients that they can use and that they can sign. But if you've got a situation that's much more complex, and really for me, anytime you add another person into the mix and into the business, that immediately becomes much more complex. I encourage you to have the legal paperwork to back up you and your intentions and your partner's intentions should anything bad happen. But those are the legal documents that you've got to have, and then you've got to send them over to the Secretary of State and pay the fee. And so not too difficult 4 steps. LLCs are one of those things that a lot of people have because they're kind of easy to get, but they're not easy to maintain, and they're not easy to manage effectively. And so that's kind of what we talked about in our last webinar too, is what do you actually do to have a good LLC that actually works? But let me see if I can find, I think I had one slide that I might have skipped over about, oh yeah, here it is, how to manage your LLC. Here are some of the things that if you're thinking about doing this, that you've got to make sure that you do, or that you pay somebody else to do. You've got to make sure the information with the state is up to date every single year. You've got to keep your books tight. You've got to pay and file all of your taxes. You've got to file all your annual reports, and you've got to pay your annual fees if you have them. Texans, you don't need to worry about it. We only pay once when we form the LLC. We don't have to pay for the LLC itself ever again. But where I moved from Memphis in Tennessee, you pay $300 to form the LLC, and then you also pay $300 every year after that in order to keep it. So if you're forming in a state that is not like Texas, you got to pay those fees in order for your LLC to be active. You've got to make sure that you maintain your compliance. And some of this is stuff that, depending on what state you're in, is a lot. Some of it for some states is not all that much. And so you're going to want to think about as you decide how you want to manage your LLC. Is this something that you're going to spend time Googling and figuring out how to do, or is this something that you don't mind paying somebody like me to do? And for me, if I either form the LLC for you, or if I file your taxes for you, and maybe you bring your business with you, I take care of most of these boxes for you every single year, particularly as it relates to your LLC in terms of the annual reports that are required for here in Texas. You won't need to pay for those. I'll just take care of those for you every single year, and I'll use the information that I already have from your taxes and put it on there. So, but keep in mind, all of these, every single bullet point on here that I've listed in this presentation, if it's something I'm telling you to do, it's something that you've either got to figure out how to do, or something that somebody is going to charge you to do. And so you may look at the sticker price of LLC and it says, hey, LegalZoom says I can get it for $800. Fine, $800, I'm done. Let's keep it moving. Then all these other things start happening. And so, LegalZoom catches you when you're on your entrepreneurial high and you just want an LLC and you want to post about it on social media. But then you may not be so happy when $200 bill comes every single year for somebody to service a registered agent that you haven't even met, that you don't even know. Or if you didn't realize that you have fees that you need to pay every single year for your LLC. And maybe in the middle of the year, you chose to close up shop. And so now you're just, now your business is just sucking away money on compliance costs that you could have knew about before you got the LLC. So I try to minimize as much of these burdens for my clients as possible. And I've been fortunate to have some folks who are part of this community among that group too. So if you are looking for somebody to at least just have a conversation, answer questions, or if you're ready to take that jump to actually form an LLC, feel free to reach out to me. This is the link where I on my website where I focus on LLC stuff, priorityfinance.com/LLC. I can drop it into the chat real quick. And in addition to stuff about our business and stuff about how to get started, on our website, we've also got some other stuff, some other like resources that might be helpful for you. For example, when you first pop on here, if you want to check that your name is available, you can click check now and it'll take you down here to a map of all the 50 states in the United States. And you go ahead and click on yours. It's going to take you directly to the link where you can search to make sure that your name is available. And so I encourage you not to just use this, right? You want to search on social media, you want to search on the internet, make sure that somebody else hasn't already taken it. So that's one tool we have on here is this map where you can figure out those things. And you can also click here, learn now, to figure out how much does it cost in each state to get an LLC. It'll take you right to a link that is a good breakdown for every single state, what you can expect to pay upfront and what you have to pay every year and what you have to do after that. So if you're interested, or if it's something you've been thinking about and you're ready to take the next step, feel free to either join, come to our website, or I'll drop my email address in here too. And reach out to me. Just let me know that you were here and that you listened to the presentation, and maybe you have some follow-up questions or you're ready to take the next step. And I'm more than happy to work with you. But I think that's it. I really appreciate the opportunity to come back. I hope somebody learned something new or something that was helpful or beneficial to them. I know at least 2 ladies on here have heard me talk about this stuff way more than they probably ever wanted me to. But I'm still grateful for the opportunity and willing to serve as a resource for anybody who needs it. So thank you. Appreciate you listening.
Mr. Pryor.
Yes, ma'am.
Is your contact information on your last slide? I know you just put it in the chat, but oftentimes, because once we leave, they can't see what's in the chat. So when we post it, someone may want that information. So if it's on your last slide, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, it's good for YouTube.
Now.
I didn't even think of that.
Huh? Oh, it's there. Okay.
Yeah, I just popped it in there. So
I have a question. I know we talked about this the last time we had a meeting, but can you just talk about how we have so many people that are just so nervous about their address, and they got to get a virtual address before they get an LLC, and they don't want anyone knowing where they live. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So we've definitely had this conversation. I remember when we talked about this over the phone. So one of the reasons why people like to get LLCs is because they like the idea that people are engaging with their business, but not with them. When you get an LLC, you're going to get an EIN number to use on all your documents. So that means your social security number isn't floating around on paperwork at the bank and at all these different places. A big reason why people like to do it is because when they go into business, they like the privacy. They like to keep things separate. A lot of business owners do it. It's one of the reasons why LLCs can be beneficial. The hardest thing, particularly in the pandemic, when a lot of businesses were started, that don't have actual locations. The hard thing is with the address. And particularly when you file for an LLC, you've got to have one. You've got to have somewhere for the state to say where they can find you, or they can send you important documents. And you, for the most part, you can't, you can make the decisions that you want to, but you can't lie and send it to somebody random, because then you might get important paperwork like money that you owe, and it needs to get to you. And so some of that information is public. Some of that information is stuff that is posted on the Secretary of State's website that you can find. You can find any LLC. The name of your LLC is always public. And so the address that you have listed can be a concern, particularly if you don't want people knocking on your front door. But to the folks who are concerned about that, what I will say is that you can pay your way into privacy. You can pay to have an address that is not your real address, but is where you can access mail. You at some point with the state, at least, you know, if you're going to serve as your own registered agent, you need to have a place where the state can actually knock on the door during regular business hours. And so some folks who are starting businesses don't have a place like that, and they don't want people coming to their home. But the unfortunate reality of the situation is that if you are working from your home and you don't have an address anywhere else, or you maybe, you know, you may pay for a PO box, but sometimes PO boxes aren't accepted. You're kind of in a tough spot. You have made the decision to do something that is probably the most bold and public thing. You want everyone and anybody to know about your business, and you want everyone and anybody to know how to find you in order to pay you money. And to try to do that, to put yourself out there on social media and on the internet with your website and all these different things, but then try to hide one little piece of information, which is your address, can be very, very difficult. And it's a very big ask to say that you want everyone to know who you are, but you don't want to know anybody to know where you're at, right? And so I'm not going to make a judgment on folks who value that privacy, or folks who do not care and who don't value that privacy. But I will say that if privacy matters to you, you need to be willing to pay for it. And before you come to anybody like myself, or if you choose to do it yourself through a LegalZoom route or whatever the case may be, before you form the LLC, you need to have an address in mind. That's not something that I can do for you. I can't make a ghost address for you in your business. All I'm going to do is basically just send you a link to a business that does that, right? And then you can pay them to do it, and then you just tell me what address to put on there. But if you have family, if you have little ones that you're worried about, if you have concerns about this, straight up, maybe if you serve a clientele where you know you don't want them anywhere near your door, you don't want them to know where you're at, you know, you may be in a certain industry where that's really valuable. You are taking a risk by going into business in the first place, right? You have made a decision, like I said, that is the most bold and public thing that you could do, which is say, come buy my thing and give me money to do it, and here's where you can find me in order for me to sell you. At some point, someone's gonna know where you live. If somebody really wants to find out in this day and age,
Right,
they can figure it out. Like, it's not gonna be very hard. And for a vast majority of people, nobody's trying to find you. Nobody really cares, right? You know, nobody's really that worried about it. But you know, obviously you want to keep your head on the swivel and do the general things. You don't want to be acting like you got an open door policy and all this stuff. But you know, people can steal that stuff off of a family photo at your family barbecue, and then they see the address at the end, and they put it together that you their cousin, and you know they figured out the neighborhood, and then boom, you know they know where you live. So it is an option. You can pay to get a virtual address and other things like that. That's not something that I advise people on. It's a decision I encourage them to make on their own. But if you want to be private and you don't want anybody to know where you're at, this may not be the thing for you to do. But LLC can help a little bit, but it's not going to help you with that peace of mind if that's really valuable to you. Being in business is just not private. It's not a private thing to do, you know. So yeah, I'm sorry to get on my soapbox about that, but it's something that
it was needed.
it comes up often, you know.
A lot.
People are always concerned about it, and as they should be. It's crazy people out here, right? But
Just get you a pit bull.
right, and some other things to keep in your house too, if you're really worried about it, right? And most of the time, the people who are worried about it don't have issue using those things, right? To keep
Right.
So
Come on,
I think you're gonna be fine.
dough.
Yeah. I think you're gonna be fine. You know, so yeah, take that for what you will. Yeah. I got a question here in the chat real quick. Do I manage LLCs already established in other states? So it depends. I'm more familiar with some states than others, and so I don't want to promise you my expertise in a state like the three I mentioned, Delaware, Nevada, or Wyoming. I do some tax returns for people who live in those states, but I don't know about managing LLCs in all of the states. And so if there's something that you're interested in, you can send me an email, tell me what state, tell me a bit about your business and how you run it and where you live and you know, who formed the LLC for you, all those things, just so I know the background. And then I'll be able to tell you if I think if it's a good relationship. But yeah, Texas for sure. That's where I am, and that's the first state and where most of my business is. But I've got a few folks who are on the East Coast, a few folks in California. So I can work my way around. Yeah. All right. Well, it's 2 minutes past the hour. I'll stick around as long as is necessary if folks got questions. But other than that, you know how to reach me if you need me. I doubt that this will be the last time that I'll be, at least as an audience member for the Wednesday Nugget series. And maybe I'll come up with something else if Ms. Head and Tamika aren't sick of me yet.
Never.
We love having you. We love having you.
With some good information.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm hoping it was helpful. I always appreciate the opportunity to come share some stuff about this.
Well, we appreciate you adding value to our notary community.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Added value to me. So I gotta.
Yes, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I know I'll be bugging you, but it's needed. I promise you that we get questions all the time. Like, did you go back? Did you watch the YouTube? Like, he's been on so many times. Just go watch the YouTube.
You know, they didn't watch it. They didn't watch it.
But and probably those people who were bugging us like that, they're not here tonight.
They're not here tonight. No, but you know what? We did what we were supposed to do. So that's all we can. That's all we can do.
Yep.
But I appreciate you spending your Wednesday evening with us, giving us valuable information like you always do. I think the people that did show up, I think the people that's going to watch it on the YouTube, our next class, we do have a class on the 11th, which is workshop 1, loan document review. And then we have something special for all the people that have been asking us about weekday classes. Just this one time bang. Once a year, we are going to do Notary 101 on a Tuesday and Workshop 1 on a, did I say that right? Yes, Wednesday. So Tuesday and Wednesday back to back. For all the people that have not been able to get on Saturdays and then Wednesday didn't work for you, now you can do both classes in 1 week and you set to go. So hope that, go ahead.
That's only for September.
Right. I said one time bang. That's it. Oh. Once a year. So hopefully when we get some people on there to learn this profession, it's a good profession to be in. I love it. I've been doing it for two and a half years, but at first my mom was like, you need to do loan signing. I was just doing general notary work. I was like, no, I'm just gonna stick with my general notary work. Now I can't get enough of it. My phone, I'm running to that phone every time it dings. I'm trying to get it. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Everyone have an enjoyable Wednesday evening. We didn't keep you too long. Ray, again, thank you for being here. Miss Head, thank you for letting us have this opportunity.
You're welcome. I appreciate you.
All right.
All right, y'all. Take care.
My name does not come. Miss Beulah, it definitely did. Oh, that was to me private. I'm so sorry. Yes, Miss Beulah, I saw your name in the chat. All right. Good evening. See y'all later.